So 60 players, only 60 players. 60% of player saves destroyed. Ooh, that is not good. Is it from just one game, multiple games? Well, let's take a look. Apparently it's EA, or maybe it's more than one thing, but let's see.
Publisher of 2022, the show where we try to work out in the year of 2022 who basically screwed it up the most and the least. Today, it's Electronic Arts, and I'm just going to dive right into their releases. TLDR Sports. It is notable how EA have had so little outside of their live services for the non-sporting audience. So when we look at their launches, right, they have Grid Legends, which was decently but not amazingly received. We have F1 2022, critically well received, some issues from players. Madden NFL, FIFA 23, the last FIFA, of course, NHL 23, and Need for Speed Unbound, which is a Need for Speed that's certainly taking a new art style, which to some people is good, to some people is less good. Does stand out, but certainly, I think marketing-wise, I don't know if it was that heavily pushed. But that's basically it. They had
I didn't really hear about Unbound until like recently. I think they should have leaned more into the artistic style, just because not many racing games are doing that. They have the budget that Need for Speed does.
3 racing games. They had 3 sports games. I think a situation of launching into, I think with sports, a large, I wouldn't even call it niche, but like it is a large niche, so probably plenty of success there. Obviously, FIFA Ultimate Team doing decently enough in the racing space. Now, I think for sure, a lot of entries into franchises that are not particularly...
I mean, their sporting games are always going to sell. Just it's not even a question. It always will.
Stellar.
They're also not been taken very well by Metacritic users.
Yeah.
If you look at those scores, Madden's got 18, FIFA's got 14, NHL's got 25. They may be just spinning their wheels, or I imagine it's just down to it's the same game every year for all of these franchises largely. Even minor improvements that developers are probably quite proud of won't be represented in how the overall experience of the game feels, especially when it's every year. I imagine they're just like, why is this resetting all my progress? Why am I jumping back at the start of the treadmill, giving them all my money again every year?
I mean, who knows, but the money does keep on going up.
That's the thing. It's like it doesn't matter what the critics or the users ultimately say if the broader user base always just buy the game and always throw in the money, and that's where they've had this free ride.
Like a lot of people who buy the EA sports games, it's because they're into sports. Like they're not into games. They're into the sport.
For years now, and they're just still on it.
Yeah, well, it's like, hey, if we have the licenses, if you want the football, then you don't. Yeah. Well, we'll see how it goes with, of course, EA football or EA soccer, whatever they end up calling it, this year. In terms of delays, there's only one that we know about actually, and that is the Dead Space remake. That was initially going to be actually late last year, but it's actually been moved to early 2023 before there being a confirmation that it will be in January this year.
Yeah, so, which is one
coming in pretty hot.
I saw that.
But otherwise, there's really not that much that is in the public, which kind of means we've got to talk about their notable ongoing titles. We won't bore you with sports. We already know everything that's going on there. It's worth saying that the Sims is still a complete powerhouse, right? It's now free to play. I think that makes a hell of a lot of sense given that the big money is, of course, in the humongous quantity of DLC, because they've been making DLC for that game since 2014. It's just 8 years of DLC. And that's actually after they reported that it reached, this is incredible, record daily, weekly, and monthly players in December of 2020.
That's
like
crazy.
They talked about that in some of their financial reporting. Like that is stunningly strong tail to a game. Now, ultimately, that
I think
does
the game
mean
is also
that
pretty
there's more
good
DLC coming. There's more, the stuff packs, and Sims 5 is not going to be here anytime soon because it has been talked about. It's basically been pitched as a creative platform. It's called Project Renee. That brings back a lot of things from Sims 3 because Sims 4, it represented a large downgrade over Sims 3 in so many ways. So basically, it's trying to bring that back, and I think just more Power Lives-like elements. The initial showcase for Project Renee actually did look pretty good. That said, Power Lives also looked pretty brilliant, and I imagine Power Lives will be able to at least compete on some aspects, maybe just the home and space creation really well, and probably sooner, all while not...
It's hard to say, because Sims is such a huge name that I don't know how they're going to be able to push against it.
Costing people the
Everyone knows what
extreme
Sims
price.
is.
Yeah, that's where I find it a little bit
Like me personally, I don't like these kind of games, but I know Sims very well.
interesting because Power Lives, to any like core gamers, especially say if anyone watching this video is interested in The Sims, they will find Power Lives when that's out and they'll be able to go, well, Power Lives is likely the more soulful, the more like consumer friendly version of this, the one that's going to be tailored better to our uses than The Sims 5. But given that The Sims 4, which is, you know, released like almost 9 years ago and is free to play and reached record players, I imagine that's a pretty big case of the people playing this likely aren't gamers in a big way.
Yeah.
And that's historically been a thing for The Sims. So I feel like this is going to be, because we just
Yeah.
mentioned about them having like a free ride with sports games, I imagine it'll be largely the same
Was it
with
like-
Sims 5.
Moms pretty much play Sims.
It'll just be how much of their most dedicated audience will be cut away when it comes to Power Lives. I think that's the only fear they have, but they don't even have that much of a fear because if they have less lead time, especially under EA now being better in terms of actually developing games, as far as I understand, under Laura Mill and their like kind of revamped approach, and especially them learning lessons from Apex and from Battlefield, which we will get into shortly. I think there's just a case of it might not be as, you know, Sims 4 clearly like a miss.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think like the whole live service thing. I think is what EA is like really gonna try to focus in on.
Early. They probably won't do the same again. They
Yeah.
probably won't make that same mistake, especially if they are smart enough to see Power Lives on the horizon, which is
I don't think they give a shit about Paralyzed. Just straight up, I don't think they give a damn.
basically just saying they've had a big free ride and now they have a bit of a fight on their hands. But I think they're
I don't think so.
Power Lives wasn't out early enough to catch EA with their trousers down.
That's what a lot of people were saying when like other MMOs were coming out, when WoW was like the king of MMOs. Still kind of is, but like not to the degree it was. Like there, like that's why the term MMO killer was like a term most MMOs were like being put on when they were coming out. I think it's similar. Like I don't think it's really on their radar, to be honest.
In the way EA have been for a long time. So I think The Sims is gonna continue likely. More or less.
Yeah. It's also notable there are paid mods on PC. So yeah, that's I think something that'll mean more content. To go to the other things though, Apex Legends, which is still delivering content pretty consistently, still leading everything that it's promised. So a new character every season. There's a 5th map in the game, a whole bunch of story and event content as well.
Like some of my relatives still play Apex like on a daily basis. It's just I never really got into it myself.
In May of this year, crossed 2 billion in
They told me it's really good.
lifetime
They really
bookings.
like it.
Half of that alone was within the 2022
Ooh.
fiscal year.
Oh, that game's growing.
Yeah, and that is before the mobile game came out, which of course has its own heroes, modes and maps, which is quite big. There's then also seemingly a new single player game that exists within that universe being developed. So really, it turns
I might try it for the single player.
out like as long as you don't call it Titanfall, it does pretty well. It's maybe not the
that's
rule,
bad.
but it is, continually going strong. Very much unlike their other big live service,
think
which is the one that has been honestly kind of ripe for disruption for quite a long time. Something I think Call of Duty has tried to do by adding in Battlefield-esque game modes into quite a lot of its recent entries.
I mean, why not? Battle Royales were like really popping off, so it's like I don't see why they wouldn't be trying to put it in their games.
But so this game entered 2022 in a hard place, right? 21 ended with basically a massive leadership shakeup in the wake of this game's honestly just disastrous launch. They then announced that their live service content would come out in June the following year. Like that's when they delayed season 1 too,
That's
which is
huge.
bonkers.
Echoes of Halo.
Yeah.
I mean, worse in some
Yeah.
ways, right? That is because there were so many bugs that needed to be fixed, and a lot of like just design feedback had to happen. And they really did triage a lot, actually, because it is important that we talk about not just the disaster, but the response to it. So the easier fixes were actually made a little bit more quickly. The more complex ones that required player feedback, those were worked on, and obviously a bit of a larger time frame, but they were being worked on. One of the biggest things, though, was actually stepping back major back-of-the-box features that players didn't want, right? So taking the breakthrough mode down to 128 players, confirming that any maps that are not already in development are going to be made for 64 player. So basically moving away from that, and then Hazard Zone, which is just not going to receive new support after Season 1. It wasn't popular. It was in the same way that they just tried to do Fire Zone to get...
Is it because the maps are just too big? I'm not really sure why it's not doing so well.
Battle Royale, they just decided to make Hazard Zone for like their sort of extraction type game mode. And it's like, maybe Hazard Zone would have worked if it was a separate free-to-play game. In the same way that maybe Firestorm would have worked if it was a separate free-to-play game and it didn't feel like those games...
Yeah, but it's like, a lot of people buy Call of Duty, so I don't think they need to make it free-to-play to get in players, like other free-to-play games. I mean, it would definitely probably help, but I don't think it's really required.
Are actively damaging Battlefield because the need to, I suppose, have like some form of cross progression or whatever with like the specialists, the whole design of specialists seems to have been made for Hazard Zone and then had a big knock-on effect on the player fantasy in the mode they actually wanted to play, which is like the core Battlefield experience.
Yeah.
So kind of weird.
Yeah, it just seems to me that like they started in a really bad place from a really bunch of ideas that they clearly didn't like actually think the full way through, or you know, maybe it was an implementation issue, but they clearly didn't like
Yeah, because like an idea may look good on paper, but it may not fully play out well once developed.
test them out with what realistic expectations. But it does seem like largely they kind of went, oh, and realized how stupid they were, which I think is kind of the good thing going forward. I think it's weird where maybe it's just cope, but I see a lot of people been pretty excited for Battlefield's future, although it is with a massive asterisk of it's still the EA and the same people who made it. So hopefully they actually have learned properly. Which is
I liked Battlefield single player. The last one I played, I don't remember which one. The 2040 or something? No, that's not it. I forget the name of the Battlefield game. But it's the one that had like a really good campaign.
We see that so much. We see that, I guess the recent example is Blizzard's World of Warcraft, where it was very much, how could these people have made this game this way?
Yeah.
And then the same people make the game way better. Next time you go, oh yeah,
And this time, like, you know, that leadership, that does include Zampella being more involved. There's like a lot of projects going on. We should talk about some of the content though, right? So because you know the way Halo Infinite was just this slow, protracted death, and it took them ages to actually get their content cadence going. Well, June brought a new map, a new specialist, new gadget, new vehicles with rollouts during that reworked an original map. And
like if this was free to play, I'm actually trying it myself.
A bunch of other changes as well. Season 2 was a new map.
I'm not even that big on shooters.
New specialist, a new gadget, 2 vehicles, 3 weapons, and the addition of portal weapons with a whole bunch of things. Reintroduction of Rush as a permanent official game mode, 2 launch map reworks, and then in November, which is just like 2 months later, we have another new map, new specialist, new gadget, 3 new weapons, new vehicle, more portal weapons, quite a lot. And now the new map and vehicle, they felt in line with the final stand, which was such a crazy fun expansion of Battlefield 4. And then there's also been a further 2 launch map reworks and the rework of the specialist system back into being distinct classes, which is one thing that people really wanted. Now, a lot of people were then worried that it's like, okay, well, you fulfilled your obligation. I suppose you're just going to stop now. But actually, it seems that no. We've actually had the confirmation the game is not going to be left out in the cold after Season 4. Instead, there is going to be a Season 5 in 2023.
Well, that's good news for the players.
And then obviously the question is, how long will they do anything after that, right? Before they just feel it's time for a new mainline Battlefield. Now, even on that for this franchise, we've got...
Like, you can't deny that was really cool.
Is how long
you know what
will
I mean?
they do anything after that, right? Before they just feel it's time for a new mainline Battlefield. Now we've
this part right here.
Been on that for this.
Like, look at that. That is just so freaking cool.
Franchise. We got quite a lot. So there's now multiple new studios who are coming together to support this franchise outside of DICE. There's a new non-2042 single-player campaign that's being made by Ridge Life Games and the Halo co-creator Marcus Leto, which is kind of interesting. And then there's also some sort of Battlefield mobile game that they've been testing throughout 2022.
Yeah, I think we just have to hope that whatever Marcus Lito's on is a little bit better than, because he was the one behind Disintegration, wasn't he?
I believe so.
And that game did not release to any sales or positive reviews whatsoever. That was a
Didn't
pretty big
even hear about
disappointment.
it.
But I think there's a weird, I guess, a sense going across this like worst publisher series where they're all at different stages.
You know what's funny? Like I haven't really watched any of their other videos when it comes to like studios, like the worst studio, whatever. You would think EA would be a lot longer, but I think this has been their shortest video yet.
Of life. It's always nice to use really obvious analogies. And both Xbox and EA seem to be in roughly the same place. Obviously, EA's pumping out a lot of outright exploitative sports games, so you can't really
Yes.
forgive them too much for that.
Yeah.
That's just a bad thing they've been doing to fund everything else.
You know what's funny is a lot of these sports games, it's like, especially like the NFL and stuff, it's like they could just hire a development studio, make a football game, and keep the full rights, and they would make way more money. Because it's not like EA has been making particularly good sports games. So
Apex is going well, but it's the same over at Xbox, where their live services are largely actually going fairly fine. It's just their actual game releases aren't.
Mm-hmm.
So I have this image in my head
Yeah.
of them being like, they're like the person in the gym all the time wearing a hoodie, and no one actually knows what they look like. It's about what whenever they decide to actually release their games, take the hoodie off, what will they look like?
Yeah.
Will Jedi Survivor launch and be an absolute, I guess, a bigger success than Fallen Order was, which was a pretty big damn success? Will that be like, here's Respawn?
yeah,
We've learned from Fallen Order. We're going to make a better one. We've learned from our ability to make stuff in Apex. It's going to be better. The next Battlefield is going to be massive because we've learned so much from our actual live service location. Same with The Sims 5. Same with whatever else they have on the go. Like, obviously, because I know Callisto Protocol was a little bit mixed in terms of reviews and cases. Like, will Dead Space be able to come back and go, yeah, we are the real Dead Space? Deal with that in the same way that people expect Xbox's like actual first party stuff to come out and go, this was in development for a long time, not because we were in bother, but because we were making it really damn good.
Yeah.
And that's the question. Will that be true, or will it just be we kind of learned some lessons and then forgot them when we're making a new game again? Because obviously very recently there was a thing Jason Schreier tweeted about, the size of budgets and timelines of video games means that if a AAA studio, a big one, like started a project from literal point zero from scratch today, it would likely be for a PS6 or the next gen Xbox instead of in the current generation. Is it going to be the case of they'll have a load of games that they started but weren't agile enough to learn all these problems and solve them like mid development?
real time.
We're going to have like one more cycle of EA games that are a bit like kind of haven't learned these lessons, or will it just be they'll actually do their job properly now?
I think
that's the thing.
BioWare will kind of matter there. To do some numbers though on Battlefield, when you look at the recent reviews for this game, right, we are seeing all reviews 34%, just recent reviews though 63%. And when you take a look at
jump.
Steam charts at the 1 year view, you can see the game's well and truly dead, like at a point. Then, whenever we start to hit June and the seasonal rollout of content, numbers get better before dipping back again, but then peaking more significantly than ever November 28th and remaining so far seemingly at a higher baseline. So they have done a pretty decent job there. That being said, that's only their Steam numbers, and overall, there's no way this game is doing as well as they thought it would do.
Yeah,
it is nice
I would agree.
at least keeping this going. Now, when we go into the news, one thing is acquisitions, where actually EA purchased no studio.
Because you got to remember, like EA is expecting big returns on their games. They usually don't really care about a game like a studio if they're not expecting big returns from them to begin with.
But there actually were rumors that Amazon were going to purchase EA. Now that
that would have been crazy.
I
doubt it.
Not to be, and it was likely a known source deciding to cash in their credibility to make a payday on a bit of insider trading. We all love it when that happens.
Nice.
It was also then revealed that Comcast NBC Universal as chairman made an offer to Andrew Wilson that basically would be an EA merger with a spin-off of that company in the form of NBC Universal. So basically, That's like TV, film, theme park, sports, streaming. EA slotting into that. To be honest, I think it would have been a big old disaster. They basically could not come to terms on the overall value or the structuring. Bring the C-suites together would have been chaos, and also would have meant like the whole thing is owned in majority by by Brian
FIFA?
Roberts, the NBC or the Comcast NBC Universal CEO, and Andrew Wilson would kind of be working to him, which maybe he wouldn't actually want.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things about Wilson being in charge of EA for so long. It's his company. I imagine he would like to very much keep it that way. Honest.
Yeah,
You
there's
would
then
think.
of course FIFA. Look, we
Mhm.
talked
Oh,
about this before.
Okay. Yeah,
but,
I was
you
gonna
know, in
say
this year,
it
we're
said
gonna
the
be getting
drama, so
EA
I thought I was
Sports
talking about
Football Club,
FIFA.
EA Sports FC. That's going to be their game. It won't be FIFA. Now, EA is still actually going to have licenses for many of the teams and players because those are actually negotiated separately. But, of course, Inter Milan, they are going to be in eFootball.
Yeah, it's
Stiff competition.
this is going like, well, you say that eFootball, obviously that released to an absolute nightmare, but Konami kind of did pick up the ball on that a little bit, which I think is interesting. Maybe not this time around, maybe far in the future, but I think like the loss of branding from losing the FIFA name, as well as Konami kind of maybe trying eFootball and
That's actually really big. If FIFA does their own thing and releases an actual FIFA game, I think EA is going to really struggle to get those players back. Because, like I said earlier, people who play sports games. A lot of them are not gamers; they're sports enthusiasts. So the reason they bought those FIFA games is because FIFA was there. So,
like get grinding out a little bit.
it's why like branch sports games don't do anywhere near as well as the ones that have like the main brand where you have like the actual players in there, like MLB, NFL, like those kind of games.
Well,
It
to look
might
at the,
actually
to look
work
at the
okay.
numbers for eFootball, I mean, we have very low numbers, like around 1,000 players. But then
Yeah,
we do see it rises up. You know, we're around 8.
like even all-time peak of 13,000 is absolute crap for a sports game.
Half 9,500
that must be
to
the
now a
update.
rough peak of around 12,000.
Yeah, and that's obviously that's not massive, but that's respectable enough. You can see maybe not take away, but
It's not
more
bad.
like how much of
For a normal game, that's really not bad, but it's really, really bad if you compare it to like actual FIFA numbers.
EA's lunch needs to be taken by others. You know, just a couple crumbs scraped off the table, or does it end up, a
So,
decent part of their sandwich comes off like?
Essentially, on PC, it's a tenth of FIFA 23.
That's obviously that's actually pretty impressive. To be honest, I know it's not massive on PC comparatively to the console
course.
market, but still that's not bad. And you could see that coming with EA Sports FC because, like, obviously, I suppose American viewers might not understand this, but no one thinks of it as EA football. It's FIFA. The game is FIFA. That's what it's known as. That's what it's called by. If some obviously, if you go into the shop and ask for FIFA, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's called EA Sports FC this year."
Yes,
And
because
and the same people will be on the box, so they'll probably buy it anyway. But it's like the cultural consciousness of, oh, I haven't heard of a new there's no new game called FIFA. So unless you go
Yep.
to look for it, you'll likely not find it. In that weird sense.
some normies could be thrown off, but I don't think it'll be.
Wait, let me hear what they said again, because I don't know if I actually agree with that.
FIFA. The game is FIFA. That's what it's known as. That's what it's called by. If some obviously if you go into the shop and ask for FIFA, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's called EA Sports FC this year."
Yes,
And
because
and the same people will be on the box, so they'll probably buy it anyway. But it's like the cultural consciousness of, oh, I haven't heard of a new there's no new game called FIFA. So unless you go to look for it, you'll likely not find it. And that
There's no new. Oh, he's talking about the esports. Okay, I agree with that. The eFootball. I thought he was saying like if FIFA released their game, a FIFA game, would people find it? Okay,
Weird
I
sense.
some
misunderstood.
normies could be thrown off, but I don't think it'll be the largest thing. And the idea
Yeah.
of the game with FIFA being good. So FIFA's president Gianni Infantino said that only the best games will be FIFA, right? I can assure you the only authentic real game
It's more like they wanted more money, most likely, out of the contract, and EA was like, no, and they're like, okay, well, we're gonna try with someone else.
that has FIFA, we'll have the FIFA name. And what's hilarious there is that they immediately then gave the FIFA name to 4 separate like crypto or NFT based projects that are probably going to be shit. So to be honest, I think EA are still.
Yep. I think, yeah, it was just a case where they wanted more money. EA wasn't willing to do it. So they were like, well, we'll just go to these other developers who have offered to pay, maybe a sizable chunk up front. So
going to remain king, but there will be a little bit of a funky transition.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing then is licensing stuff. Of course, we all know how successful EA Star Wars was. And I mean, it's funny. There was a laughing stock.
It was really good.
But hey, Jedi Survivor, Jedi Fallen Order,
Yeah.
Battlefront 2, which they,
Well, I don't care about the Battlefront game. Well, I do care about Battlefront because it was one of my favorite games, but not the new ones.
fixed, and then once it was in a good place, decided not to support anymore, which is weird. We've got
Star Wars Squadrons, which everyone is like,
yeah,
this game is perfectly fine. It's good.
is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. I ever went, EA made a game that is what it is. What timeline have we jumped into?
Yeah,
And that's continued
so
since.
that moves us in to their next deal, which is with Marvel. Disney. They're making games for Disney. There's going to be a single-player Iron Man game from the team at Motive.
What's kind of weird is that EA can make really good games. It's just they don't want to. They want to make games that are relatively same-ish and just monetize it.
Which, will it make FIFA money? No, but Marvel is undoubtedly big, and perhaps with their future content, they'll be able to get people excited again. It's just notable that like really good games like the Guardians of the Galaxy one apparently didn't, and I think this is where it's interesting to me. Apparently, those didn't like. I mean, they did well critically and stuff, but I remember hearing some talk about them not really making the money that Square Enix would be thrilled about. That said, it is Square Enix targets for games.
I think both EA and Marvel would look.
What's sad is like I'm not really interested in Guardians of the Galaxy as the video game. I don't know why. I really don't. You would think like I like that kind of gameplay, and I liked the movie, but I just didn't really have an interest.
Very closely at the performance of games and go, okay, what's the difference here? They would look at the Avengers not doing very well. They would look at Guardians not selling very well and kind of understand, I think we know what the problem is. The problem is the marketing and the weight behind it. Because you look at Spider-Man and go, well, that wasn't MCU and that was a profound success.
Yeah.
So it must be about making the game good. Because that's the difference. Obviously, Guardians was fine, but wasn't marketed very well, and was a little bit more out there in terms of.
That could be. Well, maybe just in my head, I thought it would end up badly, and then, like maybe it's also a case where I haven't heard like great things about it. I just heard like it's an okay game, like it's decent, it's good, but it's no Elden Ring, that's for sure.
Who's in it? In terms of Guardians not being quite as household a name as Spider-Man, for God's sake.
Yeah. And
then looking at like Wolverine for Insomniac's game eventually. And you gotta go, okay, well, they know what they're doing. I as hard as it is to keep in mind, sometimes a lot of the people making these decisions are actually reasonably smart. They will be able to sit down and go, all right, well, just make an Iron Man game and they'll probably do all right. But we don't put Robert Downey Jr. in it because that'll make it not be as profitable. It could be too expensive. So can we do like, I guess, calculated expenditure that's not super risky? If you're EA and you say, well, yeah, we had Jedi Fallen Order, and look at how well that did. And that wasn't particularly tied to any really strong parts of like Star Wars IP.
Existing lore. Yeah.
So we'll
And that was one of my, like, I really liked Star Wars Fallen Order. I'm really looking forward to the new one.
Set you up stuff in the Marvel world.
Yeah.
We can use character names.
I think it's coming out soon, right?
It'll be fine. That's what I imagine anyway, assuming good faith from everyone involved there. And it's honestly like not really personally exciting because I can't imagine playing the fucking Iron Man game or a lot of these, to be honest. But I imagine they'll actually be, if their I guess proficiency with Fallen Order and Squadrons anything go by, I imagine they can do perfectly fine.
Yeah, so there's probably plenty of pretty good single-player games actually coming out.
It's that weird thing where maybe it's just because there's there's a lot less time for games, a lot more games now. But like it could harken back to the era of licensed games that a lot of us really did enjoy when we were younger, which is a bunch of mid-ass games, but set in good licensed worlds that the developers clearly cared about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's like the IP is great, but like the games were usually like subpar.
Now, I think something that could tie into that is Laura Millet, who's like sort of running there. Basically, she's like the general sort of studio manager or whatever. But they've restructured some things so that each of EA's operating groups now reports directly to her. Now, the first time we really heard about Laura was when she was really championing how Respawn Entertainment made games, and Vince Zampella, all of that. So I would kind of just TLDR this.
I think
as
Respawn came out with a lot of good
pretty
games,
good.
right?
There's another interesting thing, which has been some community-led development that's been going on, right? This has been happening with the Dead Space game from Motive and Skate from Full Circle, where these have actually had the involvement of a community council from day one. And there's been feedback on all sides of that that's actually been really great.
Yep.
Of course, the first evidence will come with Dead Space, but that does look pretty good. Now, to move to something that is less good, we do, of course, have
I
that
don't really like
Codemasters acquired.
horror games like Dead Space, but I'd still like I played Dead Space, had a lot of fun with it. I think it's because it's not like Silent Hill, where you do have to run away from the monsters for most of the fights. Like I like Resident Evil type of games where like it's horror, but you're meant to kill the horror.
Slightly Mad Games. And of course, Codemasters was acquired by EA. Now, Project Cars then. It's a simulation racing game, much smaller team, but very much for like the big fans of like, more sim-like racing. And unfortunately, Project Cars 1 and 2 have now been delisted. And that's because their car and track license agreements have expired, and seemingly they have not found it worth renewing.
Yeah,
It's rough.
Just
Downside of licensing, I suppose.
yeah, which obviously is you think
Yeah.
of, are they going to do any live services in the Marvel stuff? Are they going to do any Star Wars live services? And obviously they'll be easier because it'll be
I think car games have a rough time because it's if you want to be successful as a car game, a lot of times like you have to, go with where the car enthusiasts, which is like the brands of the cars, the makes and models.
one company you're dealing with, but it's still going to be like it's just that challenge of live services not working well with the licensing stuff of the past, because all it takes is someone to change their mind. Especially if you're building like an Apex and you go, oh hey, it's Apex, I mean, it's a very Fortnite thing to do. We'll throw in a load of random characters, whatever. But you can't build a forever live service in an IP unless you're really tight knit with the company or you sign some
Yeah.
perpetuity thing, which I can't imagine any big IP owner would be happy to do.
Yes.
Which is just going to be, it would be nice.
I think they'd be fine with it if it was like very, very specific. Like, we can make this character, for example, let's say Geralt, and he can always be in the game, but we can't add to it. Like, basically, they give him what is going to be approved, like maybe Geralt, the model, and like a weapon or two of his and animations, and like, all right, these are the only things that we're adding for Geralt, and without, adding to the contract, this contract is only going to cover this. And you guys can't say, like, no later. And we can't add things to him, kind of thing.
Nice if they would just stop taking
I think would
games
make
down.
more sense.
Wouldn't that be nice? Because
Yeah.
it happens more often than ever before now.
And unfortunately, this is all comboed with Project Cars 3 being like a little bit of a departure, not really working out overall fantastically, and now the Project Cars label itself being shuttered. And there's a final disruption that ends 2022 that
Because also a lot of those contracts, from what I understand, is like royalty based. So
it's insane. Like literally, the 31st of December is the last opportunity for you to have catastrophic news, and they did have it because an issue happened over the holiday break where Madden NFL online franchise mode stuff was struck with a pretty damn catastrophic error. 60% of the franchises for players are going to be unrecoverable based on their current understanding of the error.
that's actually crazy because that's like their biggest game too. Who freaking is the idiot that made this happen?
This game has been wiped for a significant majority of players.
Yeah, sorry.
And it's asking them to start again.
Sorry, did you have any really nice big investment in our...
Yeah, I was saying, these are the kinds of games that you spend a lot of money to get your characters from like the packs and stuff. I don't know. I doubt I'd ever play an NFL game again if this happened to me.
heavily
And they weren't willing to refund me or anything.
monetized live service? Whoops, all gone.
So
sorry,
rough.
sorry, we lost your money. But it's effectively, it's like going into a bank going, sorry, we lost your money. You're like, what
Yep.
What do you mean
Exactly.
you lost it? It's gone?
Where?
But where? It was someone dropped the hard drive, it's on, it's gone now. You're like,
Yeah.
Cool. And you imagine if that happens, like, how many of those people won't start again? How many of those people won't come
Man.
back again? It's almost as if when people realize how much of a unreasonable scam
A
digital
waste of
items
money.
are,
Yeah.
they might wake up sometime.
Yep.
Maybe. I mean, as much as I love EA having loads of money to make loads of Apex stuff and loads of the Jedi Survivor and all that, I would also like if they had a report that said our live service bookings are in the bin because people stopped throwing money at us hand over fist.
Oh, we'd all love that.
Yes, we would.
Now, for what they're doing then in 2023, we have Dead Space on the
So there's no recourse. EA's literally just like, well, it happens. Like, that's crazy.
27th
Good
of
year.
this month. We have Wild Hearts the 17th.
That looks really
That'll
cool.
be interesting.
Yeah.
That's that for anyone who doesn't remember what Wild Hearts is. It's them with Koei Tecmo going, hey, can you make a Monster Hunter, please? And Koei Tecmo went, we've already made 2 of those. They're called Token, so sure, we'll do it, no problem. So that's like,
Token's actually a pretty fun
of all
game.
the things they're doing, that's the most out there. And it'll be very interesting if EA try a different strategy and it works.
Yeah, and I mean, this is looking like a pretty damn decent year for core titles from EA.
Yeah.
Whereas it was all racing and sports in 2022. Where, yeah, so Jedi Survivor, 17th of March. There is EA Sports PGA Tour, sometime 2023. We, of course, have Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle-earth. Mobile trash, don't care. EA Sports Football
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't hear that they even were making a Lord of the Rings game, but it makes sense if it's mobile.
Club, don't care. Immortals of Avium, coming out in 2023. This was announced.
No
That's
idea.
one of the EA original program games.
Yeah, we don't know anything about
It
it.
was announced at the Game Awards 2022 with only a cinematic. Then there's rumors of Dragon Age Dreadwolf in 2023. Late,
That'd be cool.
though. Which, to be honest with you, I'd be interested in. I'd like to see a return to that world that involves a lot of lessons being learnt. And as much as like I'm obviously pretty burned on BioWare, if this game is good, then the chances of the next Mass Effect project being good are way, way, way up. That's something I'm
Yes.
extremely interested in. So
Same. Mass Effect is one of my favorite. Well, Mass Effect 2 is, I would say, top 3 of my favorite games of all time.
Nope. that's it for what we sort of suspect. Now, there is also Rust Heart and Skate, which are currently undated.
Yeah, Rust Heart's a weird one because the company basically been super silent about it for a long, long, long time. But the Twitter account's still just posting other things related to studio, not the game. So it's very interesting what that actually is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like an EA original Iron Giant adventure sounds like it would be maybe not
Interesting.
like an It Takes Two.
It sounds interesting at the very least. I don't know if I would be interested in based on that little clip we saw, but
Or maybe not one of those like darling kind of smaller games that comes out with a big label on it and does extremely well. But it's like, hey, EA, they're like, hey, there's money, make a good game, and then they make a good game. That would be like that. If you're gonna go for the what's a game publisher supposed to do angle, that's basically it.
Yeah.
Hello, we'll publish a game. Done. Happy days. So hopefully that actually does make a show.
So overall, then, when
Yeah.
we look at EA, I think we have a situation where 2021 was a bad
I think it's
year
pretty
for
positive.
Battlefield. We look at 2022. What do we see?
Oh, I'm talking about like the future games from EA actually do look like they're going in a positive direction, which is really cool.
Well, I think we do see a earnest attempt with Battlefield 2042.
2042, that's the one I was thinking of. That's the one where I played the campaign. Like, I had a lot of fun with it.
We went through the numbers today, showing that yes, that's actually had a positive impact. So that is at least good enough, and I think that they are not stopping after season 4. That is, that's a lot better than them just
Yeah.
like, oh, we're going to fulfill the 1-year plan and then drop it. So I think that is better. That we know there's been a significant investment into Battlefield, that Vince Zampella has seemingly been brought over from some of his Respawn duties to kind of oversee things being better within that franchise is also quite good. When we look at Respawn, Apex, pretty damn brilliant. I know that
Yeah,
players
I would
do have
definitely
issues and
agree.
it's like some lag related.
Which I think a lot of people were surprised, because I think, what was Apex one of their first shooter, especially like to this degree?
Issue. Just
But they were
basically long-standing
always
issues that
good.
the very hardcore players really, they've just been asking for fixes for a while. But like knowing that they have a single player in that universe on the go, they've got their Star Wars games. 2022, it's a quiet year for them. And it's mostly one of not losses. Like, they have had losses, and, you've had low Metacritics for many of these sports games. But it's just kind of weird. Like, on their live services, I think they've been doing a good enough job. Like, Battlefield, up shit creek, but at least they stuck with it and seemingly are going to stick with it a little bit more properly. I don't know, it's weird, actually. I really find it hard to... I find it hard to kind of give them a final score.
Yeah, it's really weird. The way I see it is
I would say they started off with a very poor score, but it's like making up homework. You know what I mean?
like this year it's almost the same as Xbox, where they didn't feel in their mission to literally publish games quite as hard as Xbox did, where they released almost nothing. But it's like they didn't do a great job, but in the grand scheme of things, they're on like the quiet grind. And I
Yeah.
think that's what it feels like to anyone watching. I imagine none of you give a shit about any sports games outside of how evil are EA. Are they going to win most evil company again?
Yeah,
No,
I
that'll
think
just
most
be Activision
players.
Blizzard King for
Yeah.
the foreseeable future. But in the games that are coming out that would be interesting to you or I or yourself, it would be like they're just slowly working, trying to make good things kind of happen. A lot of it hinges on
Yeah.
how well Dead Space and Wild Hearts come out.
Also, the Star Wars game, Survivors, which I think comes out here soon.
Because I think Respawn are just free wins because that's a trustworthy studio. They make good games all the goddamn time.
Oh, I see what he means. Yeah.
There's no way Jedi Survivor will be anything less than at least pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Like Fallen Order was. It won't
Yeah, I would agree there.
be a downgrade. That would be a
Togeden also was really good, so I think Wild Hearts, it's in my head, like, it's a pre-order game. Like, I would be shocked if it came out bad. Because Togeden 2 and 1, like, Togeden 1 was decent, Togeden 2 was way better. So to me, it just wouldn't make sense if it, like, regressed and, like, just was worse across the board.
awful experience. But I think it's just going to be they get a profound meh this year. Or yeah, for 2022. But maybe this year coming, they'll be like, you know what? You've earned maybe not a lot, but you've earned a little bit of respect again.
I think it would be a lot. Like, if you think about it, for a studio, it's actually really good if they can come out with even Jedi Fallen Order level of games. So to me, like, it would be like, yeah, awesome job, guys. Like, you're doing really well with just that one game, right? Look at FromSoft with Dark Souls and Elden Ring. They really just released that kind of game, but they do it really well. And to me, that's Star Wars Fallen Order. To me, wasn't at the level of Dark Souls, but I think it was pretty close. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'm really looking forward to the next one, which is exactly how I feel with Elden Ring. Like, I think Elden Ring across the board was a better game, but that doesn't mean like I think Fallen Order was a bad game in any way. It's more like if I had to give Elden Ring like a 10 out of 10, not that it couldn't be better, but that I think it's as good as it's the best game in a long time. Um, like I'd probably give Fallen Order like maybe an 8 or a 7 out of 10 in terms of like just how good it could be. So to me, I was like, yeah, that's really good. And the fact that they're sounds like they did like with Battlefield instead of just giving up on it and maybe working on the next Battlefield, which I think a lot of people expected. To be honest, I fully expected that from EA. Like I am surprised in a good way with what's coming from EA lately. Outside their sports games. I think like I'm not going to comment on that because the sports games are just I don't think they're made for gamers. I think they're made for sports enthusiasts. And if you're a sports enthusiast, if you don't know, they nickel and dime that group of people across the board. Whether it's the paying to watch their stuff, whether it's the merch, like none of that is cheap. So to me, it just makes sense why the sports games from EA are just so crazy monetized. Because it's like they know they can get away with it because that player base aren't gamers. They're there for the sports.
Because you've made games that people actually want to play.
Yeah.
And I think that's what, because there's all these other like kind of the debate over are Ubisoft the worst publisher or are Activision Blizzard the worst publisher. Both are from different perspectives. It's hard to give EA worst publisher in any capacity.
Like with EA, take away the sports section of it because I don't really count it in my mind. I don't think the people who are working on like Jedi Fallen Order and stuff are like having any kind of input with the sports games. I would assume. I obviously don't know, but based on everything we see, So to me, I don't count them as like the same thing because it's for different audiences. Like one is for actual gamers and the other's not. So, and if you look at the part that's for gamers, like Jedi Fallen Order, Guardians of the Galaxy, uh, those games, like even the car games to a degree, though I would lean towards that also being in the sports field in a way. Like they're actually really doing well.
Outside of maybe most exploitative for taking all of the FIFA Ultimate Team money. But
Yeah,
that's
FIFA
yeah,
Ultimate Team is their Diablo Immortal, just on
yeah,
a larger scale.
yeah, and that's like
Yes.
you'd never want to
And it's
overlook.
also not
Exactly.
free to play. Very majorly.
Yeah, they get the best of both worlds. Something Blizzard would love to do, or Activision Blizzard would love to do. But it's outside of that, they're for core gamers, they're kind of just mostly harmless and doing nothing, which I think is the. And then if you like Apex, then they're just kind of okay. I think that's ultimately my thought. Where it's hard to hate them outside of Ultimate Team, and maybe if you're a Battlefield fan and you're kind of like still seething, waiting for something to be like good and released good. This is like, you could do a lot better, yeah, but at least you're not as vile as you used to be. And it's been a while since you've
Absolutely.
taken a handful of studios out the back and shot them in the head, so at least that's kind of going for you.
Oh my god, yeah, they were really known for that, like scumbag behavior.
I don't think anyone's really killed studios recently. Then people need developers too much for that to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the ultimate takeaway is
Yeah, that's it. I think
they're getting close to the best publisher just because they haven't made any egregious mistakes.
yeah, this year is going to be really pivotal if
Yeah.
you know, if their Monster Hunter competitor is really good, Dead Space is really good. Like if
I think it will be. Like I said, I played Togeden 1 and 2, and I actually thought they were really good Monster Hunter-ish games. I don't think they I don't think they're as good, of course, as like actual Monster Hunter, but I think they're a close second. Like they're not too far off when it comes to the quality. When you compare them to release dates, obviously Togeden hasn't released anything recently
Jedi Survivor
other than upcoming Wild Hearts. So, but I'm really looking forward to Wild Hearts.
was really good. Like, and I mean, especially if Dragon Age was to come out, we could see a 2022 or 3 even that is very strong for them.
Yeah, Dragon Age is going to be a tough one, I think, for them, but hopefully they nail it because, like he said, that is going to be a very good sign that they finally have. Is it Bethesda? I'm thinking of whoever it is. Like they're if they're working on it, Mass Effect. Hopefully they are. That it's also going to be good.
Until then, though, we will just have to wait and see. We'll likely do some sort of final, like, you know, awards,
Yeah.
maybe tier list or something for all the publishers. Till then, though, you
Yeah.
can check out the rest of this series or the other.
Yeah, I plan to look at those other videos. I don't know if I'll do it on stream because they're like fairly long videos. Like I said, this is like their shortest one. So I'm actually glad to hear EA's finally like turning things around when it comes to making their games. Obviously not with the sporting section, but like I said, I don't count that. But yeah, good video.